Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. May 1st, 2018.
The Kuhner Report is powered by Kelly Financial Services, cleaning up your financial bull. Get the peace of mind that you deserve at Kelly Financial Services.
Who leaked Robert Mueller's questions? Now that's the question everybody is now asking. Okay, my friends, President Trump is absolutely enraged, and I don't blame him. Another leak. And this shows again what a partisan witch hunt the Mueller special investigation has become. So here is the absolute latest. The New York Times yesterday leaked a series of nearly 50 questions that it says Robert Mueller, the special counsel, wants to ask President Trump in a face-to-face interview. Now, many of those questions, in fact, the overwhelming majority of those questions, have zero to do with Russian interference in the election, collusion with Russia, meddling with Russia. Almost the overwhelming majority of them, almost all of them, focus on obstruction of justice. So you can even tell by the questions that have been leaked that Mueller has nothing on collusion. Why? Because there wasn't any collusion. So you can now desperately see how Mueller is fishing for any kind of crime whatsoever. Now, Grace asked me last night a very important question, just out of the blue. We're talking about Mueller, the leaks and everything. And she says, why would somebody from Mueller's office leak these nearly 50 questions? What's in it for them? And I said, it's so obvious what's in it for them. They want to keep the Russia collusion narrative. They want to keep the narrative that there's a moral cloud, a moral taint on Trump, that he's somehow illegitimate and under possible indictment all the way to the midterm elections. Because it's getting pretty obvious now that there was no collusion. Even many on the left are now conceding, nah, that dog don't hunt. Okay? It's not going anywhere. So what they're trying to do is reframe and redefine the terms of the debate by saying, okay, forget Russia, but what about obstruction? Obstruction. In other words, there's a crime, we just have to find one. And this is to present Trump as illegitimate, as morally discredited, as somebody who is a potential criminal who's on the verge of becoming indicted, and they want to keep this narrative going until the Democrats, they believe, sweep into power in November. Furthermore, again with these leaks. Now, they keep telling us, this is what the media keeps telling us, that Mueller is this great stand-up guy. He's a straight arrow. He's completely nonpartisan. He's completely objective. He keeps his cards close to his chest. He's Elliot Ness. He just wants to find the truth. If that's the case, how come his office is leaking like a spigot? There's constantly one leak after another. You're running a special counsel investigation. Everything that you're supposed to be doing is supposed to be, for now, in secret until you have the evidence and the goods. Instead, they're running a PR shop. They're running a relentless public relations war against the President of the United States. They're leaking and leaking and leaking to simply damage the image and credibility of the President. That's all they're doing, with no actual evidence. And that's why the President came out today on Twitter and absolutely blasted the New York Times. By the way, to be fair, the Wall Street Journal now has the questions, AP has the questions, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, everybody now has the questions. It went to the New York Times and from the New York Times to the entire media. And so, as Trump rightly put it, so you first create a non-crime collusion. You make that up, that I engaged in collusion. And then, after that, you then unleash this special counsel on me. And all you do now is leak and leak and leak. And even the collusion alleged crimes, that was based on unclassified illegal leaks. And now you're leaking even more. So all they're doing now is trying to manufacture a narrative that the president of the United States must go. The election of 2016 must be overturned. And on this key point, the left is not going to stop. The media industrial complex is not going to stop. Robert Mueller and the deep state and the Democrats are not going to stop. They are determined to overturn this election, or the election of 2016. And like I told Grace last night, what you're witnessing is a slow motion coup. You see, say what you want about banana republics. When they do a coup, they know how to do a coup. It's done within a couple of weeks. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. But here, it's like boiling a frog. If you do it too quickly, the public's going to react. So what you do is you boil it slowly by just ratcheting up the temperature. Bit by bit, bit by bit, bit by bit. And then the public just gets exhausted by all of this. Now, as to the questions themselves, I'm telling you right now, they're absolutely outrageous. There's no way in hell that President Trump should sit down with Robert Mueller. Let me give you some of the big questions that have been asked, okay? This is now what Mueller wants to ask him. Why did you fire James Comey? What were your motives for firing James Comey? Who were you trying to protect when you fired James Comey? That's none of your business. You want the answer? Here's the answer. It's none of your business. Article 2 of the Constitution is crystal clear. The president has the full executive authority to fire anybody in the executive branch. What are we talking about? I'm sorry, sorry, you're my boss now. Oh, hold on. So I'm the commander-in-chief. What election did you win, Robert Mueller? And I got to justify to you why I fired the dirtiest cop in America, James Comey? That incompetent, lying criminal? That guy, that dirty cop. I got to justify to you. I'm sorry, I don't answer to you. You're not my boss. And this is more than just President Trump. I agree with Kimberly Strassel in the Wall Street Journal on this point 1,000%. This is something much more. This is now about protecting the presidency itself. The powers of the presidency itself clearly delineated in the Constitution. The Constitution on this point is unequivocal. What it says is the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, is in charge of the executive branch. And members of his cabinet, he can hire and he can fire. And he can hire or fire for whatever reason he deems necessary. I'm not kidding. He doesn't like the way you dress at work. If he wants you gone, you're gone. If he doesn't like the color of your tie, if he wants to get, it's a stupid reason to do it, but if he wants to do it, he can fire you. So he doesn't have to give Robert Mueller any explanation. He's exercising his constitutionally legitimate authority to fire the FBI director. Period. Full stop. Then, apparently, Mueller is now asking Trump, listen to this, how did you feel, I swear, how did you feel about Jeff Sessions' decision to recuse himself? So now we're getting into my feelings? Now what? You're searching for motives? Like what I think about it? What my feelings are none of your business. I like it. I don't like it. I'm angry. I'm sad. How is that your business? If Jeff Sessions recused himself, by recusing himself, he opened the path towards the appointment of a special counsel, i.e. you. And now you're out to get me. That's what happened. So how I feel about Jeff Sessions recusing himself, again, is none of your business. Your job was to find evidence of collusion. Your job was to find evidence of me or my campaign interfering in the election with Putin, with the Kremlin, to steal it from Hillary Clinton. Do you have anything campaign related? Do you have anything collusion related? Do you have anything you want to ask me about my supposed relationship with Vladimir Putin? You obviously don't. What that means is you haven't found anything on collusion. Why? Because there was none, and you know it. So now what they're trying to do is they're trying to set up a trap and say, okay, forget collusion, it's obstruction of justice. But how can it be obstruction of justice if, one, there was no original crime? In other words, if there's nothing to obstruct, there was no collusion, so what am I obstructing? That's number one. Number two, I'm allowed to fire the FBI director. It's my legal, lawful, constitutional authority to do so. So how can you impeach me for something I'm constitutionally, legally allowed to do? You're making it up as you go along. And let me make a prediction right now. The only way now that they can get President Trump, I smell a rat and I smell a trap. Those questions are almost intended to goad him. They're almost intended there to sort of as bait for him to say, what? Hold on. He's asking me why I fired Mueller? Sorry, why I fired Comey? I have to give him a reason why I should fire Comey? I got to tell him how I feel about Jeff Sessions. It's almost as if he wants the president to explode and say, I'll teach him. You want a sit-down interview? I'll give it to him with both barrels. And then once they get him in, all they want is to put him in that room. Because then they're going to set him up for what's called a process crime, a perjury trap. Something. When did you hear about the firing of Michael Flynn? When did you hear about Sessions recusing himself? Oh, really? That's not what we hear. We hear something else. In other words, they want to nail him for making a false statement to the FBI. The way they got Flynn, the way they got Manafort, is exactly the way they want to get him. Remember, it's an old trick of James Comey and Robert Mueller. Remember, Scooter Libby. Who was the guy that got Scooter Libby? Comey's good friend and now lawyer, Patrick Fitzgerald. He was the special counsel appointed by James Comey and fully supported by Robert Mueller. And Patrick Fitzgerald, if you remember, within a couple of days, realized it was the Deputy Secretary of State, Richard Armitage. He's the one that mentioned Valerie Plame's name. But they wanted to get Dick Cheney. They wanted to cripple the Bush regime. And so they went after Cheney. And by going after Cheney, they went after Scooter Libby as chief of staff. And they ended up getting Scooter Libby, who had nothing to do with Valerie Plame, who had nothing to do with leaking her name, had nothing to do with the purpose of the investigation. They got him allegedly on making false statements. And now it turns out, according to Judith Miller, who was the key witness, they lied to her to coerce false testimony from her to go after Scooter Libby. It's Scooter Libby all over again. Set up a special counsel. See with the left hand. Look at the left hand. Collusion, collusion, collusion. When the real goal is, here's the right hand. We want to get Trump on anything or everything. This case, it's they want him on perjury. This is nothing more than a perjury trap. So my question to you is this. What do you think President Trump should do? Should he sit down with Robert Mueller? Should he give him a face-to-face interview? Liberals keep saying, if he's got nothing to hide, what is he afraid of? And point number two, the leaking. Should Robert Mueller be held accountable for all of the leaks coming now from his office, political leaks intended to undermine and hurt the President of the United States? 617-266-6868. Your reaction, your calls. Next. 123 here on the great WRKO. Okay, we now know the nearly 50 questions that special counsel Robert Mueller wants to ask President Trump in a face-to-face interview. The overwhelming majority of them deal with supposedly obstruction of justice for having fired his good buddy and friend, lifelong pal, James Comey. Almost nothing on Russia collusion. 2 questions. Should Trump sit down with Mueller? And Trump says, again, these are more disgusting criminal leaks. Should Mueller be held accountable for his office leaking like a spigot? 617-266-6868. You want to know what the Mueller investigation ultimately boils down to? Get him. Just get him. Just get him out of office. By hook or by crook, just get him. You want to sum up the deep state, the media industrial complex, the never Trump resistance, the Democratic Party, the Republican establishment, and of course, Comey and Mueller themselves. It's very simple. Just look, we want you out. We're trying a way to impeach you. We're going to do it any way we can, but just do us a favor, okay? Why don't you just leave? Just get out. Listen now to Mad Maxine, Representative Maxine Waters, in an interview with Time Magazine, who now is naming her as one of the most influential women in the United States. Look, we're trying to impeach this guy. We're just sick of it. Just leave, okay? Just walk out of the White House. Just leave. Go. Leave. Roll it, Jared.
Please resign so that I won't have to keep up this fight of your, having to be impeached because I don't think you deserve to be there. Just get out.
There you go. We don't think you deserve to be there. Look, Hillary was the most qualified person in history to be president. She was a woman. Look at the plumbing. And you took it away from her. No, resign, get out, or we're going to hound you out. That's what the Trump resistance boils down to in essence. And democracy and the will of the people, be damned. Lou in Rhode Island, you're up next. Go ahead, Lou.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Jeff. Look, the Trump resistance is like the most bitterest group of people who think they're smart and a bunch of elitists that I've ever seen. But the fact of the matter is that Mueller is grasping at straws. There is no collusion. That's the end of the story. There was never collusion, and there isn't any collusion he'll ever find. He's going to try to find these process crimes. He's trying to get Trump to be impetuous, to jump at the bait. I don't think Trump should do it. I think Giuliani should hold him back. And I basically think that that he's trying to cover for his buddy Comey, who really should be the one who's being investigated now. And not only that, Victor Davis Hanson wrote a piece not too long ago in the National Review. This has only been a one-sided investigation. A lot of the collusion was done by Hillary and her campaign, but Mueller seems to ignore it. Mueller is everybody, a lot of people, and more people, tens of millions of people around the country are now beginning to see that Mueller is a joke. He's just a stooge of the left, and he's just grasping at straws because there's nothing there.
Amen. Thank you for that call. Look, Devin Nunes was recently interviewed. Okay, he's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. They wrote a 253-page report. Okay, nearly 260 pages. They interviewed nearly 100 witnesses. They looked at all of the evidence. Their conclusion from President Trump, or then candidate Trump, there is not a scintilla, a shred of evidence that he colluded with Russia. However, from the Democratic Party and the Hillary campaign, all they did was collude with Russia. This is not me. These are the findings of the official House Intelligence Committee. How do I begin? The Steele dossier, how they met with a secret FSB, Russian intelligence agents, how they paid them money to give them this alleged dirt on Donald Trump, how they were working with Russian intelligence to dig up all of these supposed fake news stories about Trump, how they then used the dossier, paid for by the DNC, paid for by Hillary Clinton, to then peddle it to the State Department, to the FBI, to the CIA, to the NSA, and into the deep state. There was collusion between Russia and a party in the United States, but it wasn't the Republicans and it wasn't Donald Trump. It was Hillary Rotten Clinton and the Democratic National Committee. So if Mueller is legitimately interested in collusion and with Russia, a foreign power, and interfering in the 2016 elections, why is he investigating Hillary? Why isn't he investigating the DNC? Why isn't he investigating James Comey, who was complicit in this and peddled the Steele dossier to lie to the FISA court, to spy and conduct surveillance, first on candidate Trump and then President-elect Trump? He'd have to throw his own best friend in jail. That's why they're out to get Trump, because all of the crimes were committed by the left, by the Dems, and by Hillary. And it's classic communist projection. That's what the left always does. Take your sins, your crimes, and project them upon your own enemies. That's how I know they're lying. Tony in Chicago, you're up next. Go ahead, Tony.
Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Tony.
I wanted to go back to the previous segment.
Go ahead. Sure. You want to talk about Iran? Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to see one American soldier come home in a body bag. I don't want to see one American soldier come back with a traumatic brain injury. I don't want to see one American soldier come home with a broken fingernail. History has shown us that these wars are fought for profit. This is all about invading other countries and stealing their resources. Benjamin Netanyahu is a liar and a punk. Everything he's saying is, so the reports that I'm seeing is that he wants to expand into Syria and steal their oil. And I can show you quotes from Donald Trump during the campaign where he said he wanted to invade these countries and steal their oil. Now, I don't know about you, Jeff, but I don't want to be a citizen of a country that steals resources from other countries. I'm tired of these wars for corporations.
Tony, I can just tell you this, and thank you for that call, Tony. I am opposed to a war with Iran, but I do believe it was a horrible deal. And so my position is scrap the deal, impose tough, crippling sanctions on the regime, contain them, squeeze them, but no blood. No blood for oil, or no blood for regime change, or no blood for democracy. I don't care what the reasons are. I am sick of wars in the Middle East. And one of the reasons why Trump won was that he vowed during the campaign trail to pull us out of these endless wars in the Middle East. It's time to put America first. 617-266-6868. Okay. The first members of the Central American migrant caravan are now being processed and allowed to enter the United States. By the way, I'm going to have more on that story at 2:05, I promise. But Nick Bovey is in the WRKO newsroom. He has the latest details. What are they, Nick? .137 here on the great WRKO. Okay, my friends. Boy, it's getting nastier and nastier. It is now a political death struggle to the finish between Robert Mueller, special counsel, and President Trump. Now, questions, almost 50 of them, have been leaked to the media. The questions that Mueller wants to ask President Trump. And many in the media now are openly challenging, taunting the president, saying if you have the guts, sit down face to face under oath and be interrogated and interviewed by Mueller. However, The questions themselves, almost all of them, do not deal with election meddling, collusion with Russia, coordinating with Putin. Almost all of it is obsessed with the firing of James Comey and allegedly Trump committing obstruction of justice. So my question now to you is this. With Mueller's own questions revealing that he has nothing on Russia, nothing on collusion, should Trump say, no, forget it, publish your report, say whatever you want to say, but I'm not sitting down with you and opening myself up to a perjury trap? And the leakers, is it time to hunt them down? And should Mueller be held accountable for his office leaking like crazy? Another outrageous leak to the media by a supposed special prosecutor who says his integrity is beyond reproach. If that's the case, why have you guys been leaking nonstop for the last year? 617-266-6868. Russ in Boston. Thanks for holding, Russ, and welcome.
Jeff, I've got a few things to say here.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, bleep Mueller and the Marxist press that he's friendly with. As far as Maxine Waters is concerned, she's afraid that many of her voters will escape the Democratic plantations and thank Trump because they'll finally be free at last. Now, the countries that want to keep Iran deal suffer from what I call Neville Chamberlain syndrome. They learn nothing from the Nazis. Break the deal. Let the chips fall as they may. And just let us never forget history. When the Democrats are in power in the White House, from Roosevelt to Obama, they always make mistakes and set us up for war. And just think, okay, if the U.S., Britain, and France had listened to Haile Selassie, World War II never would have happened. And it's just unbelievable. Now, when you talk about Iran, Jimmy Carter and the American leftist press did everything to try to destroy the Shah of Iran. And let's face it, the Ayatollah, from the moment that the Shah of Iran gave women the right to vote, was out to get him because he did not want to see the women have the right to vote in Iran. And that's why this whole mess started. Again, the Democrats are responsible for the death of millions of people across the globe and millions of Americans that have fought in these wars. And Donald Trump, he's not like the Democrats. If we get into a war, we're going to fight to win, and we're not going to be in a protracted situation.
Russ, thank you very much for that call. As always, very interesting. Look, there's no question about it. Jimmy Carter, in many ways, is the root of the cause of why Iran has become such a, really just such a monster over the last 40 years. He installed in power Islamist savages. Now, look, whatever you think about the Shah, and I know the CIA basically backed the coup to get him in power in the 1950s. The Shah, for all of his flaws, was essentially a pro-Western, pro-American, benevolent dictator. Believe it or not, under the Shah, Iran actually had a thriving middle class. Under the Shah, they had doctors, engineers, chemists, scientists. They actually had a thriving economy. Women in local elections, as you mentioned, could vote, Russ. You're completely right. They could go to the beach in a bikini. They didn't have to be covered head to toe. They could actually get a driver's license and drive a car. They could go to school and get an education. And so when the Ayatollah, the first one, Khomeini, saw all of these women essentially liberated with full civil rights, many of them holding down jobs, many of them driving cars, many of them wearing makeup, many of them wearing skirts, many of them going to the beach, many of them getting an education. He said, no way. Absolutely no way. The Quran and the Prophet Muhammad forbid it. I want them in burqas, every single one of them. And so he overthrew the Shah, and look at what the Iranian people have had to live through for the last, 40-some years. So it is, to me, a barbaric, backward regime. There's no question about that. However, Look, I just want to caution. Iraq, 23 million people. Iran, 70 million people. So Iran is 3 times the population of Iraq. It has a much bigger military. It has a much bigger navy. It's got allies in Russia and China. It's got Hezbollah. It's got Shiite militias all across the Middle East. Look, I'm not saying if we get into a war with Iran, we can't beat Iran. What I'm saying is get prepared for a lot of Americans to die. If you thought Iraq was a bloodbath, with Iran, you ain't seen nothing yet. They're going to cut off the Persian Gulf. They're going to target our warships. You're going to see the price of oil, just literally skyrocket to $200, $300, $400 a barrel. That's why I don't want war in Iran. And Russ, look, you're right. You talk about Munich and appeasement, and that's a very important historical event. But I don't understand why we don't use the example of more recent history. Not that Munich doesn't teach us. It teaches us a lot. But what about Reagan? What about the Soviet Union? What about solidarity? What Reagan showed us is you can defeat an evil, monstrous regime, in that case, a superpower, by using the will of the oppressed people of that regime against the regime. Almost like jiu-jitsu. You can bring them down without having to fire a shot. And that's what he did by backing Solidarity. That's what he did by backing all the dissidents in the former Soviet Union. And I believe that's the key to bringing down the mullahs in Iran. Look, we have the biggest ally in the world against these Islamo-Nazis. Their own people revile them. See, the thing about Hitler, I don't want to get lost in history, but Hitler had a lot of Germans who backed him. That's just a fact. And not just Germans. A lot of Europeans bought into fascism. So his movement had a strong popular basis. In Iran, I'm not talking about Islam across the Middle East. I'm talking about Iran now. They are sick of these radical Shiite savage ayatollahs. They can't stand the mullahs. In fact, Americans tell me, the few that do go to Iran, when you walk down the streets of any major city in Iran, and they find out you're an American, I'm talking about the people, they say hi to you, they greet you, they're very warm to you, they keep saying how much they love America, how much they love our freedom, how much they love our culture. So we have a tremendous ally and asset in the Iranian people. The one thing that would drive them back into the arms of the mullahs would be if we started bombing them. So my strategy is, you can agree or disagree, I'm just, giving you my opinion, tear up the deal because it's a horrible deal. It empowers the mullahs to build up a massive ballistic program, missile program, and they can just put a few nuclear warheads on it, and then we've got an arms race in the Middle East. Tear up the deal, and then put maximum pressure, economic, diplomatic pressure, and start supporting the Iranian people in their own war against the Ayatollahs. And just like the Soviet Union, I believe the Iranian regime will come collapsing, crumbling down and collapsing everywhere. All we have to do is kick the front door in. 617, just my opinion, 617-266-6868. Scott in Weymouth, you're up next. Go ahead, Scott.
Jeff, nice to speak with you again. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Scott. Hi. Please don't call me sir. Just call me Jeff.
Jeff, okay.
No, I mean, I'm not that important. I mean, even the kids on my street don't call me sir.
Joe, Jesus, excuse me. Jeff, your show is on fire. I'm impressed with your callers. Your callers are unbelievable. I feel pressed on it.
The best in the business.
I would agree. Okay, now, I've been listening for the past hour. It's your show. You tell me. I have an opinion on two different topics. The call me thing or Iran.
Let's go both, Scott.
Both? Okay.
Go both.
Call me. I'll keep it quick. Let's go 30 seconds each way. About call me. The only person, yes, the presidency is being, it's a joke. No, he shouldn't sit down with anybody. He's the president, like you said, on the amendment. What amendment is it? The Sixth Amendment, I believe you said?
Say it again?
Meaning Trump. He's the president of the United States. He shouldn't be sitting down with anybody. But call me. Let me stay on point, Jeff. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Comey is the only person that should be prosecuted. I said it. I don't promote other shows. He's off the air now. Remember Jay Severin?
Yes.
I said this on Jay's show. I hope he's listening. I love Jay. I said this on his show a year and a half ago. I said, Jay, I cannot believe Comey is not being prosecuted for obstruction of justice because he did not indict Hillary. In my opinion, that's obstruction of justice. Not to convict her, but he wouldn't even put her in front of a grand jury, put that case in front of a grand jury where they'll decide if a jury of her peers will decide if she's guilty. Comey, I have no respect for.
Well, Scott, he exonerated her before he even investigated her.
Well, I mean, come on.
So you want to talk about obstruction? That's classic obstruction.
I swear, I'm going to write to my congressman. What do I do? Because how is it Comey being prosecuted for obstruction of justice? How? I'll move on to the other topic. I think you know how I feel about Comey, all right?
Yes, and you're dead on, by the way, Scott.
Thank you. Now to Iran. Thank you for granting me 2 topics. That's very cool. I'm an isolationist at heart, Jeff. I don't believe, as a previous caller said, I don't want a soldier come home with a hangnail for other countries' issues. Now, I'll make an analogy. Remember being in 5th grade, 6th grade, a couple of your buddies are fighting, you let them fight. And what happens? If someone gets out of line, you're not going to let one of them kill the other kid, then you break it up. That's how I feel about Iran and Israel. If Iran has the audacity to attack Israel, let's see how Israel responds. Stay away. No U.S. soldiers at risk. But if it gets out of line, yeah, well, here come the big boys. We're the United States. We're going to get this under control quick.
Well, Scott, and thank you for that call, Scott. Look, this is the big issue. Nobody wants to say it. No one has the guts to say it, so I'm going to say it. Why is this issue so alarming? That's why when Bibi dropped his bombshell, why the entire world is talking about it. Why? Because every government knows. Israel's never admitted it, but we know they have it. They have at least 100 nuclear missiles. So, and they have privately told Trump, and they've told the French President Macron, Merkel, and Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, that if Iran should attack any Israeli city, they are going to hit Iran so hard and maybe even go nuclear. So what you're seeing now is a possible nuclear confrontation in the Middle East. So I honestly believe if the mullahs are that insane, if they actually do launch an attack on Israel, as Netanyahu has said, and he's right to have said this, we are not going to go quietly into the gas ovens as we did in World War II. If Iran hits us, we will hit back so hard, it will be the end of Persia and Persian civilization itself. So that's why everybody wants everything to calm down. That's why I believe we need to contain the mullahs. We need to put pressure on the mullahs, but I don't want another war in the Middle East. Because believe me, if Israel and Iran go to war, the possibility of World War III is very likely. That's not hyperbole, that's fact. 617-266-6868. More with your calls. Next. Sandra in Boston, you're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hi, Sandra.
I just want to say that I think this Mueller thing is a giant distraction from important things that we must be dealing with. I think that is his purpose, to just keep Trump back on his heels all the time. And I wish someone would bring out the point that Robert Mueller was director of the FBI during the Benghazi debacle.
Yes.
And people died. And if anybody should be recusing himself from this, it should be Robert Mueller, because he was fully involved in the cover-up after Benghazi, as were many other people.
Well, Sandra, look, to me it's as plain as you know, the light of day, as the nose on everybody's face, that Mueller is a paid assassin. He's a creature of the swamp. He despises Trump. And basically, Comey admitted that he leaked his confidential discussions with Trump, leaked it to the papers so that Mueller would be appointed special counsel to take Trump down. So what you're seeing now is an attempted coup. And the guy that's going to do the assassination is Robert Mueller. And now he's fishing for a crime. And that's why I'm urging the president, whatever you do, don't sit down with Mueller, because he will cut your throat from ear to ear. That's what he does legally. He will do everything in his power to destroy you and entrap you. And that's why I'm telling the president, you should just tell him 2 words again and again. blank off. Arthur in Chestnut Hill. Go ahead, Arthur.
Thanks, Jeff. A few things. First of all the people who are prosecuting Trump are the ones who should be prosecuted. It is a total joke, but at this point, if I were Trump, I'd keep my mouth shut and not give my enemies thoughts of where I'm coming from unless he's playing some game with them. With Giuliani on board, okay, Giuliani will find a way out of this, but he should never appear before these guys. They never get anybody for a crime. They get somebody who had nothing to do with anything for perjury, and that's what they're trying to do here. With respect to Iran, look back at the Arab Spring, Jeff. Remember when Obama, who's responsible for the death of millions of people and the dislocation of so many refugees, I don't know how the man can even look in his face. He caused the uprising in Libya, where we lost our great ally Gaddafi, and look what we wound up with. We have problems in Tunisia. He took down Mubarak and the Muslim Brotherhood was in charge for a while, but thank God they had a strong military and got them. And he was responsible for the uprising in Syria. Now he's responsible for that civil war. In the end, he always was against our allies and with our enemies. Iran is what they are today because of that treaty or that agreement that it looks like they wrote it, not us.
Brilliant. Arthur, absolutely brilliant. That's why I say tear it up. Tear up that deal. Coming up next, the invaders have now crossed the border. Next.
The voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 100.7 WZLX HD2 Boston, an iHeart radio station.